The marker trembled in Miguel's hand as he faced the whiteboard, his brow furrowed with effort. Slowly, he traced the letter M, shaky but recognizable, then moved on to an I. Donna leaned forward, holding her breath as though she could guide his hand with the sheer force of her will. The classroom grew quiet, every sound muted under the weight of the moment. When Miguel finally finished spelling his name, the crooked letters glowed brighter than any poem Donna had ever taught. A hush lingered in the air as Miguel stepped back, staring at the word like he had just discovered fire. Donna's throat tightened, her eyes stinging as she whispered, "That's your name." Miguel nodded, a smile flickering across his face, his chest rising as if for the first time it carried pride instead of shame. Around them, the faint smell of dry erase ink mixed with the electric scent of hope. It wasn't just writing, it was claiming identity. Donna knew she would never forget that moment, but beneath her joy, a shadow of doubt curled tightly in her stomach. She had taught Shakespeare and Whitman, had led young minds through sonnets and metaphors, but never the raw foundation of language itself. Was she truly prepared to guide adults through their first letters, their first fragile words? What if she failed them, if her methods fell short and their trust slipped away? Courage, she realized, was no longer an abstract theme from literature, it was the air she had to breathe. She handed out scrap paper and asked the students to write their names. The room filled with cautious scratching sounds, the pencils moving as if unsure of their own power. Aisha bit her lip as she shaped each letter, then looked up with a nervous smile when she succeeded. Ravi erased his attempts twice, before finally leaving faint marks that resembled his name. Donna moved among them, her heart swelling at each crooked line that held the weight of entire lifetimes. There was no grandeur here. No applause, no polished essays to admire, only shaky letters and hesitant voices. Yet the atmosphere pulsed with more meaning than any lecture hall she had ever known. She realized that these names, simple as they were, carried the power to open locked doors, to write dreams that had been silenced for too long. Teaching literature had once been about interpretation. This was about liberation. Donna felt the difference like a quiet earthquake under her feet. As the students packed up, she promised them, "Tomorrow, we will learn sounds. These names will grow into words." Miguel clutched his marker like a torch, unwilling to let go of the symbol of his triumph. Donna gathered the scraps of paper, tucking them into her bag as if they were sacred relics. She didn't know exactly how tomorrow would unfold, but she knew they had begun something that mattered. It was fragile, but alive. Walking to her car in the fading twilight, Donna replayed the moment over and over in her mind. The sky stretched purple above her, the air cool and sharp, carrying the scent of damp leaves. She texted herself a reminder. Names are bridges. Another message followed. Find better materials for tomorrow. With each step, the doubt loosened its grip. The night was coming, but so was a new morning, and Donna was ready to meet it with trembling hands and steady resolve. Donna sat at her kitchen table, the ticking clock filling the silence that once had been alive with the ringing of school bells. The tea beside her had gone cold, untouched, as she spread worksheets across the surface like scattered leaves. Each page bore the beginnings of letters, simple, stark, stripped of metaphor. She had once lectured on symbolism, on hidden meanings buried in texts. Now she was building language brick by brick from the ground up. Retirement had not felt like freedom to her. It had felt like exile. She remembered the day she carried the last box of books out of her classroom, the hallways echoing in strange silence. For months, she drifted from one unremarkable day to another, her sense of purpose dimming like a lamp left on too long. But now there was something new, fragile but insistent. A spark had returned, one that demanded she prepare for tomorrow. She scribbled notes in the margins of her worksheets. M hums, S slides, A opens. These were the things she would say to guide them. Simple, tangible cues instead of lofty interpretations. She added quick sketches: a moon for M, a sun for S, an apple for A, a table for T. They were crude, almost childlike, but she reminded herself that childlike was exactly where they had to begin. Humble steps toward towering possibilities. Fear still gnawed at her though, sharp and insistent. Could she carry these students forward without stumbling herself? What if her explanations fell flat? If the sounds twisted on their tongues and discouraged them? What if someone walked away and never returned because the struggle was too much? She pressed her pen to the page, forcing herself to focus on what she could control. Doubt would not prepare the lesson, only discipline would. She pictured Miguel's hesitant smile, the way his shoulders straightened when his name took form. That moment had been pure, untouched by fear, and it reminded her why she was here. Teaching had never truly been about content. It had always been about human connection, about igniting sparks of courage in another's eyes. She whispered aloud, "Show up, Donna, just show up." Sometimes, showing up was the bravest act of all. The next morning, her bag sagged with worksheets, markers, and tape, heavier than usual. Yet she felt lighter as she carried it, each step echoing with anticipation instead of dread. Entering the classroom, she found her students waiting, their eyes curious and cautious. Aisha clutched a small notebook like a lifeline, Ravi sat silent but steady, and Miguel leaned near the board as if eager to begin. Donna inhaled, lifted a marker, and smiled. "Today," she announced, her voice calm though her heart raced, "we will meet sounds." The letters M, S, A, and T appeared in bright ink on the board, anchors in a sea of possibility. One by one, she explained, demonstrating with her mouth, encouraging them to follow. Laughter mingled with stumbles, persistence with silence. By the time the session ended, the fear had shrunk to a manageable whisper. Tomorrow, she thought, would bring blending. Rain lashed against the windows as the students shuffled in, their coats dripping, the room filled with the scent of wet wool. Donna's pulse matched the rhythm of the storm outside as she drew 2 letters on the board. M and A. They sat side by side, small and innocent, yet together they held the weight of her lesson. Today was about blending, about building bridges across sound. She prayed the bridge would hold. "Watch my mouth," she said, shaping her lips carefully. Up. Now, together, ma. The sound slipped into the room, fragile but alive. Aisha leaned forward, mimicking the movement, her lips forming the new shape. Ravi frowned, muttering under his breath, as if testing the weight of the sound. Miguel whispered it softly, reverent, as though speaking a prayer. Donna's chest tightened. The storm outside momentarily forgotten. She set 2 small counters on the desk, sliding one toward the other. M plus A makes Ma, she explained, moving them until they touched. The click of the counters echoed like a key turning in a lock. Slowly, the students followed, repeating the blend in hesitant unison. The classroom shifted, not with thunder, but with possibility. Something had clicked, not just the counters, but their courage. Ravi tried again, his voice firmer this time. "Ma," he said, and his eyes widened, as if hearing himself for the first time. Donna placed a star sticker on his page, though it was the certainty in his face that mattered most. He didn't smile, but he sat taller, his notebook open like a door. Aisha strung together Ma Sata with quiet determination. Miguel grinned so wide it nearly outshone the storm. But the progress wasn't universal. A new student sat in the back, his shoulders hunched, his eyes clouded with frustration. After 3 failed attempts, he shook his head. "Too hard, teacher," he whispered, his voice breaking. Donna knelt beside him, her hands steady on the desk. "Hard is not forever," she said gently. "We will come back to it. Learning waits, and so will I." He nodded, not convinced, but not defeated either. By the end of the session, the rain eased into a drizzle, as though the sky itself had softened. Notebooks closed slowly, pages filled with tentative blends. No one left quickly. They lingered, glancing at the board as if memorizing the path they had walked together. Donna erased the letters, but the sound of Ma still echoed in the air. Tomorrow, she knew, they would try longer steps. Driving home, she realized something profound. In literature, she had once taught the meaning of bridges as symbols of connection, transition, and unity. Now she was building real bridges, fragile, shaky, but traverse. Each student who whispered Ma had stepped onto one, even if only with a single foot. Donna smiled to herself as the windshield wipers swept the last of the rain away. Tomorrow, the bridge would stretch further. The copy machine jammed 3 times that morning, spewing out wrinkled sheets. Donna laughed to keep from groaning, stuffing what she could salvage into her bag. By the time she reached the classroom, she felt more like a juggler than a teacher. Still, she drew a large diagram on the board: a mouth, lips, tongue, and teeth. Her new map for the day. "Your mouth is a toolkit," she told them. "Today, we learn how to use it." They leaned in, curious, watching as she demonstrated sounds. N hummed softly in the nose, L lifted with the tongue like a bell ringing, and R swirled in the mouth like a small river current. She gave each letter a picture: anchor, N for night, L for leaf, R for road. The images grounded them, something tangible to hold on to when sounds slipped away. The room buzzed with effort and laughter, Students placed their palms in front of their mouths, feeling the air. They traced the movements of their tongues, their lips, their teeth, until sound became a kind of dance. Ravi stumbled between L and R, twisting them into knots that drew chuckles from the class. Donna reassured him, breaking the sounds down slowly, guiding his mouth like a conductor leading an orchestra. Mistakes became part of the music. The breakthrough came quietly. Aisha whispered the word AM, and for the first time, it emerged whole. She froze, her eyes wide, then repeated it louder, her voice trembling with both fear and triumph. Donna felt her chest tighten as tears pricked her eyes. It was just 2 letters, yet it carried the weight of an entire beginning. Yes, she whispered, her smile wide. You just read your first word. Not everything went smoothly, though. A phone rang, and one student left early, their absence echoing like a hollow note in the room. Miguel grew frustrated when his blends tangled, erasing his page until the paper tore. Donna noted silently that they would need more review, more patience, more steady ground. Teaching was never a straight climb. It was a series of peaks and valleys. She reminded herself to breathe. They ended the lesson with a chant, voices weaving together, MASTNL, The sounds grew steadier, more confident, filling the room like a shared heartbeat. The fear that had hung over them earlier retreated into the corners, replaced by something lighter. Donna erased the board but left one word written. Next, sentences. It felt like a promise, fragile but unstoppable. Driving home under a sky streaked with pink, Donna replayed the small victories. One word, one smile, one steady breaths. These were the treasures she collected now. Her bag felt lighter than it had that morning, as though the weight of doubt had been lifted. She rolled down the window, breathing in the cool air. Tomorrow would be harder, but she was learning alongside them, and that, she thought, was enough. Ravi entered the classroom with a folded paper clutched tightly in his hand, his knuckles pale. He approached Donna before class began, his voice low. "It is from my boy," he said, almost ashamed. His eyes betrayed both hope and fear, as though the letter carried more than words, it carried judgment. "But I cannot read it," he admitted. The room fell silent, the weight of his confession heavy in the air. Donna's heart clenched as she took the paper, unfolding it gently. She asked if he wanted her to read it aloud, and he nodded quickly, his jaw tightening. Scanning the page, she found the first line and breathed it into the room. "Hi Dad, I am proud of you." Ravi's eyes widened, his breath catching. The word proud was short, but it carried mountains. The class listened as though in church. Donna underlined the word proud on scrap paper, breaking it down, P-R-O-U-D, one by one. They sounded it out, piecing together the puzzle. Ravi whispered each sound, then pushed them into a single word. "Proud," he said, his voice trembling but steady enough. Tears sprang to his eyes, surprising him as much as anyone. He laughed nervously, wiping them with the back of his sleeve. The class didn't applaud, but the silence spoke louder. Aisha leaned forward, sliding a tissue onto his desk with quiet grace. Miguel gave a small nod, his smile soft. Donna let the silence linger, blessing the moment without smothering it. It was not just a lesson in reading, it was a moment of dignity restored. Ravi folded the tissue carefully, holding it like a lifeline. Together, they built a list from the letter. Dad, proud, soon, call, try, love. Each word became a stepping stone across a river too long uncrossed. Sentences began to sprout, fragile but alive, as the class repeated them softly. Meaning took shape not only on the page but in the air around them. Donna felt her chest swell, as if she too had been given a letter. Yet Ravi's fear remained, a shadow under his joy. "What about the next letter?" he asked quietly. "What if I cannot read it fast enough?" Donna met his gaze with calm certainty. "Then we will practice until you can. We will build speed, slowly but surely." He nodded, still uncertain, but the flicker of hope in his eyes shone brighter than the doubt. As class ended, Ravi folded the letter carefully, placing it in his pocket like treasure. Aisha wrote the word call 3 times in her notebook. Determined, Miguel asked Donna for extra homework, his grin wide with pride. The air buzzed with a shared sense of possibility, fragile yet growing. Donna lingered by the door, watching them leave, her heart heavy with joy. Tomorrow waited, awake and eager. Donna arrived early, only to discover the supply closet nearly empty. The markers were dry, the paper stacks reduced to scraps, and the dictionaries she had ordered hadn't come. She sighed, gripping her tote bag, realizing she would have to improvise again. Teaching had always required creativity, but now it demanded resourcefulness in ways she had never known. She told herself that the absence of tools could not stop the presence of purpose. As the students trickled in, she arranged chairs in a circle, abandoning the whiteboard. Today, she explained, our voices will be our books. A murmur of nervous laughter filled the room. They looked at one another, uncertain but willing. She began with call and response exercises, stretching sounds into chants. Without paper to distract them, the sounds felt heavier, sinking deeper into memory. Aisha hesitated at first, her voice soft, but as the rhythm grew, she joined louder. Miguel clapped his hands to mark beats, turning the lesson into something closer to music. Ravi listened intently, repeating with precision, his face serious but engaged. Soon, they were not simply learning letters, they were weaving sound into something communal. Donna felt her own heart sinking with theirs. Still, frustration slipped in when certain blends resisted their efforts. Ravi grimaced when TR tangled on his tongue, while Aisha struggled to hold CL steady. Donna improvised games, breaking the blends into parts, turning them into playful challenges instead of obstacles. They laughed, sometimes at themselves, sometimes at each other, but always moving forward. She realized progress sometimes sounded like laughter. Midway through the session, Miguel lifted his hand. "Teacher," he said slowly, "today feels different." Donna tilted her head, waiting. "It feels freer," she smiled, recognizing the truth in his words. Without paper or pens, they had relied on their voices, their bodies, their courage. In that absence, something vital had appeared: confidence. When the session ended, Donna noticed something remarkable. Not one student had left early. Not one had drifted or hidden behind silence. They lingered, repeating sounds quietly to themselves as they packed up, reluctant to let the lesson end. Donna gathered her empty bag, feeling strangely full. Tools mattered, yes, but connection mattered more. On her drive home, she reflected on the irony. She had once feared lacking resources, thinking they were the pillars of teaching. But today proved otherwise. The true materials were patience, presence, and persistence. As the sunset painted the sky gold, she whispered to herself, "We built something out of nothing." Tomorrow, she resolved, they would build even higher. The following week, Donna entered to find Ravi unusually quiet, his notebook closed, his eyes downcast. He barely responded to her greeting, and even during the warm-up exercises, his voice was absent. She noticed the stiffness in his posture, the weight in his silence. Something more than difficulty with words held him back that day. She resolved to wait until the moment was right. Halfway through the lesson, Ravi exhaled heavily and raised his hand. "Teacher," he said slowly, "can I tell something?" The class fell silent, every head turning toward him. He spoke haltingly, stumbling not from language but from emotion. "My son wrote me letters, many times. I kept them but never read them. I hid them in a box." His voice cracked as he admitted it. Donna's heart clenched at the confession. She pictured those unopened envelopes, each one a silent wound, tucked away because reading them had felt impossible. The shame he carried was heavier than any textbook, heavier than the years of silence. She leaned closer, her voice steady. "You don't have to hide anymore. Every letter you kept is waiting for you, and we will reach them together." Miguel spoke softly from across the circle. "I hid letters too, from my sister." His admission cracked the air, and Aisha nodded, whispering about postcards she had once thrown away out of frustration. Donna felt a hush fall over them, a unity born from shared vulnerability. This wasn't just about words anymore. It was about reclaiming pieces of their lives. The energy in the room shifted. When they returned to the lesson, the students carried a new determination. Every syllable felt heavier, anchored by the promise that letters could be bridges to people they loved. Donna guided them through short sentences, her voice gentle, her eyes encouraging. For the first time, there was no impatience, only resolve. That as class ended, Ravi approached her privately. He held her gaze and whispered, maybe next week I bring the box." His voice shook, but the spark in his eyes steadied it. Donna squeezed his hand lightly, her chest swelling with pride. It was not her victory, it was his. She knew the journey ahead would test him, but courage had already taken root. Driving home, she thought about all the unopened letters hidden in boxes across the world. How many lives sat in silence, waiting for words to be unlocked? Her heart ached and lifted at once. She realized she was not simply teaching them to read, she was helping them reclaim conversations they thought were lost forever. That was a task worth every doubt she had ever carried. The room was louder that day, buzzing with energy even before the lesson began. Miguel arrived early, his notebook filled with extra practice, eager to show Donna. Aisha carried a small dictionary she had purchased, its spine already worn. Ravi sat in his usual seat, quieter than the others, but his eyes no longer carried the same heaviness. Donna sensed something shifting in all of them. They began with a reading circle, each student attempting short sentences aloud. Miguel stumbled at first, then laughed at his own mistake, trying again until the words came out right. Aisha read carefully, pausing often, but her determination was evident. When Ravi finally spoke, his voice was steady, the words small but clear. Donna applauded softly, encouraging the class to celebrate every voice. For the first time, the students began helping each other. Miguel leaned toward Aisha, whispering hints when she faltered. Ravi pointed out a trick he had learned for remembering certain sounds. The atmosphere was no longer one of isolated struggle but of shared strength. Donna stood back for a moment, simply watching, her chest swelling with pride. They were becoming a community. Of course, challenges persisted. Ravi still stumbled over longer words, frustration flickering in his eyes. Aisha grew tense when asked to read without preparation, her hands tightening around her dictionary. Miguel rushed ahead too quickly, skipping sounds and tripping over himself. Donna reminded them gently, "Mistakes are proof of progress." She repeated it until their shoulders eased. Toward the end of class, Miguel raised his hand. "Teacher," he asked, "one day, can we read a story?" His words were hesitant, but the hope in them glowed. Donna's heart skipped, remembering her old world of literature. "Not yet," she thought, "but soon." "Yes," she said firmly. "One day, you will, and it will be beautiful." When the students left, Donna lingered in the empty room. She touched the chalkboard where Miguel had written his sentence, crooked but clear. It wasn't poetry, not yet, but it was alive. For the first time in years, she felt the spark of literature stirring inside her. Not as something lost, but as something waiting. The bridge between her past and present was forming. On the drive home, she imagined that day in the future, her students gathered, reading a story together, their voices weaving into one. She smiled, her hands steady on the wheel. For the first time, she believed it wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. Tomorrow, she promised herself, they would take another step closer. Donna noticed Ravi's absence before class began, and her stomach tightened. The seat he always claimed sat empty, his notebook still closed on the shelf. Miguel and Aisha exchanged uneasy glances, the energy in the room dimmer than usual. Donna tried to hide her worry, starting the lesson anyway. But halfway through, the door creaked open, and Ravi slipped inside, his shoulders heavy with defeat. He sat without meeting her eyes, his notebook untouched. When Donna asked a question, he stayed silent, his jaw set. At last, he muttered, "It's too hard. I don't belong here." The words pierced the room, stealing its warmth. Aisha reached for her dictionary, but hesitated, unsure what to say. Miguel looked down, unwilling to meet Ravi's despair. The silence thickened like fog. Donna's chest ached as she knelt beside him. "Ravi," she said softly, "hard does not mean impossible. Every step you take is proof you belong here." But his eyes stayed on the floor. "My son writes faster than I will ever read," he whispered. "I can never catch him." The pain in his voice was heavier than any mistake on paper. Donna searched for words strong enough to hold him. She decided not to argue but to share. "When I started teaching here, I was afraid too. I had never taught letters, never taught someone to read from the beginning. I wondered if I would fail you." Ravi's eyes flickered, surprised, but then Miguel wrote his name, and Aisha read her first word. "And I knew fear is just the first page. You have to turn it." The room held its breath as Ravi listened. At last, he sighed, still uncertain but less closed. "Maybe," he said, "maybe I try again." Donna nodded firmly, rising to her feet. "That's all any of us can do. Try again." She handed him his notebook, waiting silently until he opened it. The first step was not loud, but it was taken. The rest of the lesson moved slowly, but Ravi participated, his voice quieter than usual, yet present. Miguel whispered encouragement when he faltered, and Aisha offered her dictionary when he searched for a word. Together, they carried him through the lesson, a shared effort of quiet compassion. Donna felt her chest swell with pride, not in herself, but in them. That evening, Donna sat in her car longer than usual before driving home. She stared at the empty parking lot, thinking of Ravi's words. No teacher could erase such pain in one day, but maybe, with time, they could build something strong enough to carry it. She whispered into the quiet, "Tomorrow, we try again." It was not just for Ravi, it was for all of them. Donna began the next class with renewed determination. She greeted each student warmly, making sure Ravi felt included without being singled out. She opened with a group exercise, blending sounds into short words, letting the rhythm of the lesson wash away yesterday's heaviness. Slowly, the room brightened, smiles returned, laughter bubbled when Miguel misread sat as salt. Even Ravi cracked a small grin, the shadow lifting slightly. She chose this day to reintroduce the idea of stories. On the board, she wrote a simple one-sentence tale. The cat ran. It was not Shakespeare, not even close, but it was alive. The students stared at it as if it were a mountain. "We can climb this together," Donna assured them. Piece by piece, they sounded it out, until the sentence breathed into the room. Miguel read it first, stumbling but proud. Aisha followed, her voice careful, her eyes glowing with determination. Ravi hesitated, but the class waited patiently. At last, he whispered, "The cat ran," his voice thin but steady. Donna clapped softly, her heart swelling. It was not the sentence itself that mattered, but the courage it carried. The class repeated it together, voices overlapping, some stronger, some shaky, but all present. The sentence filled the room like a shared anthem, simple yet powerful. Donna realized that in this moment, they were not just students, they were readers. The difference between silence and sound was everything. It was as though the air itself shifted. Donna handed out slips of paper, each with a new short sentence. Aisha's read, "I see you." Miguel's said, "We can go." Ravi's read, "I try now." They practiced, stumbling and repeating, until each one emerged with life. Their notebooks filled with words that felt like victories. The air buzzed with possibility. Fragile, yet unstoppable. As the lesson ended, Ravi lingered, folding his slip of paper carefully. "Teacher," he said softly, "I want to bring the box soon." Donna smiled, her eyes warm. "Bring it when you're ready," she replied. The weight of his words felt like a promise. For the first time, she believed he would. Driving home, Donna's mind wandered back to literature. She had once taught her students that every great story began with small words, carefully chosen. Now she was witnessing it firsthand, the story of her students, of herself, of resilience. She whispered into the night, "The cat ran, and so will we." The sentence became her prayer for tomorrow. The classroom buzzed with an energy Donna hadn't felt in months. Each student walked in with notebooks filled, pages crowded with crooked but determined words. Miguel proudly showed her a sentence he had written on his own, "I see sun." Aisha had copied several dictionary words, tracing them over and over. Ravi entered quietly, but Donna noticed his eyes no longer carried the same weight of defeat. Something was shifting. They began with reading aloud. Miguel rushed through, stumbling but laughing, his confidence greater than his accuracy. Aisha read slowly, her voice trembling but steady, determination etched in every pause. Ravi read a short sentence without prompting, his voice firm and sure. Donna's chest swelled with pride, realizing how far they had come. The room vibrated with small victories, each one a building block. Donna decided to introduce a short dialogue, 2 lines exchanged between characters. It was simple, "Hello, how are you?" but it carried meaning. Aisha and Miguel acted it out, laughing when Miguel forgot his line. Ravi followed, hesitant at first, but his smile grew as the words rolled off his tongue. The exercise turned the lesson into a play, a stage of courage. Of course, the mistakes were there, sentences tripped, pronunciations tangled, notebooks filled with erasures, but the air no longer carried frustration, it carried resilience. Each stumble was treated not as failure but as rehearsal. Donna watched them lean on one another, whispering corrections, clapping for attempts. The fear of mistakes had shrunk into something manageable, almost welcome. At the end of class, Donna asked them to write 1 sentence about themselves. Miguel wrote, "I am happy." Aisha wrote, "I learn more." Ravi paused a long time before writing, "I try again." When he handed it to her, Donna's throat tightened. Those 3 words carried more power than any lecture she had ever given. She folded the paper carefully, as though it were fragile. The students left laughing, chatting quietly in English and in their native languages. Donna lingered in the empty room, staring at their sentences on the board. They were crooked, uneven, imperfect, but they were alive. For the first time, she realized she was not just teaching them, she was walking beside them, step by step. Their victories had become her own. Driving home, she thought about the word resilience. She had taught it once as a theme in literature, abstract and lofty. Now she saw it in flesh and sound, in crooked letters and trembling voices. It was no longer a concept, it was a living reality. She whispered into the twilight, "They are learning, and so am I." Tomorrow promised more steps, and she was ready. Donna sat at her desk late that night, papers spread around her like old friends. She traced her fingers over her students' sentences, lingering on Ravi's words, "I try again." A warmth spread through her chest, the same warmth she once felt discussing sonnets and plays. It struck her suddenly. She had found a new kind of literature, one written in fragile beginnings. It was just as beautiful as the classics she once taught. The next day, she entered the classroom with a different light in her eyes. She began the lesson not with letters or sounds, but with a story. It was short, simple, written just for them. A girl walks. She sees a tree. The tree is tall. She read it aloud, then handed out copies. The students stared at the page, eyes wide, as if she had handed them treasure. They read it together, stumbling, laughing, pausing. Miguel misread tree as three, and the class erupted in giggles until Donna explained. Aisha traced each word with her finger, whispering them first before speaking aloud. Ravi hesitated, then read his line firmly, his voice steady. Donna felt tears prick her eyes. It wasn't Shakespeare, but it was alive, and that was enough. Afterward, she asked them to draw one picture from the story. Miguel sketched the tree, Aisha drew the girl, and Ravi attempted both. The drawings were crooked, simple, but filled with pride. Donna realized she was no longer just teaching them to read, she was helping them tell stories. The classroom had become a workshop of beginnings. When the lesson ended, Miguel approached her with his drawing. "Teacher," he said, "someday, can we read a book?" His voice carried both hope and fear. Donna smiled, her chest swelling. "Yes," she said, "someday, we will read a book together." She didn't add that the day felt closer than ever. Hope had taken root. That evening, Donna sat by her window with a notebook of her own. For the first time in years, she wrote not a lesson plan, not notes, but reflections. She wrote about Miguel's grin, Aisha's determination, Ravi's courage. She realized she was rediscovering herself through their eyes. She wasn't just a teacher again, she was alive again. She closed her notebook with a satisfied sigh. Outside, the night hummed quietly, carrying the promise of tomorrow. She whispered into the darkness, "This is my new story." And for the first time in years, she truly believed it. The classroom was buzzing when Donna walked in. On the board, she had written a new sentence, "I can read." The words looked simple, almost too simple, but she knew their weight. She pointed to them and smiled. "Today, we will make this sentence ours." The students leaned forward, anticipation shining in their eyes. They began slowly, each one repeating the phrase aloud. Miguel said it with excitement, tripping on the rhythm but laughing through it. Aisha whispered it at first, then repeated louder, her confidence growing with each try. Ravi hesitated, his lips forming the words before his voice joined. When he finally said it, the room erupted in applause. Donna asked them to write the sentence in their notebooks. The scratching of pencils filled the room, a symphony of effort. Miguel decorated his words with stars. Aisha underlined hers carefully. Ravi wrote it 3 times. Each repetition carved the phrase deeper into their minds. By the end, their notebooks carried proof of a new reality. But Donna wasn't finished. "Now," she said, "we will use it." She handed out blank slips of paper and asked them to write something new, using the same structure. Miguel wrote, "I can run." Aisha wrote, "I can see." Ravi paused, then wrote, "I can read more." Donna felt her throat tighten as she read it. The room filled with pride, each student reading their new sentence aloud. They weren't just learning words, they were claiming them. Donna clapped softly, her eyes damp, realizing this was one of the most important days of her teaching life. The phrase, "I can read," had become their anthem. It was no longer just letters, it was truth. As the lesson ended, Donna lingered by the board, staring at the sentence. She had once taught students to analyze complex texts, to search for deeper meaning, but this sentence needed no analysis. Its meaning was simple, direct, powerful. It was a declaration of transformation. She whispered it aloud, "I can read." The words filled her with light. Driving home, she thought of all the people in the world still waiting for that moment. She wished she could bottle the feeling and share it everywhere. But for now, she would carry it in her own heart, safe and steady. Tomorrow, she promised herself, they would climb even higher. The weeks passed, and the classroom grew brighter with each session. Sentences became paragraphs, voices grew steadier, notebooks filled with courage. Donna stood before her students one afternoon, overwhelmed by how far they had come. They were no longer tentative beginners, they were readers, each step hard-earned, each page a victory. She saw their progress not only in words but in their eyes. She thought back to her own beginning, the day Miguel wrote his name, the trembling of his hand, the silence that followed. She remembered Ravi's first letter from his son, the tears that fell when he read the word proud. She remembered Aisha whispering her first word aloud, her voice fragile but brave. These memories played in her mind like chapters in a book she hadn't known she was writing. Donna realized she too had changed. She was no longer the woman who sat in silence after retirement, drowning in purposeless days. She had found her voice again, not in literature, but in human connection. She no longer measured her worth by essays graded or lectures delivered. She measured it in crooked letters, in hesitant sentences, in sparks of dignity restored. That afternoon, she decided to ask them something new. What do you want to read one day? The room grew quiet as they thought. Miguel said, a story for children. Aisha whispered, a newspaper. Ravi took longer, then said firmly, a letter from my son, all of it. Donna smiled, her chest swelling with pride. Their dreams were becoming reachable. She ended the lesson with one simple exercise, reflection. Each student wrote a sentence about what learning meant to them. Miguel wrote, it makes me strong. Aisha wrote, it makes me free. Ravi wrote, it gives me back my son. Donna folded the papers carefully, tears in her eyes. They had written truths that no literature class had ever given her. As she packed her bag, she noticed the students didn't leave quickly. They lingered, laughing, chatting in English, trying out new phrases. The classroom felt more like a family than a class. Donna realized this was more than education, it was belonging. It was a gift she had never expected to give or to receive. That night, Donna sat by her window, reflecting on her own sentence. She wrote in her notebook, teaching gives me back myself. She closed it gently, as though it were sacred. She whispered into the quiet, this is who I am. Tomorrow, she knew, would be their final step together. The day of the celebration arrived, small but meaningful. Donna had arranged a table with cookies, juice, and certificates she had written by hand. The classroom buzzed with nervous excitement, her students dressed in their best clothes. Miguel wore a shirt too big, Aisha, a scarf shimmering in the light, Ravi a jacket he hadn't worn in years. They gathered, waiting, uncertain but proud. Donna began by thanking them, her voice trembling. You have worked harder than I can say. You have shown courage I will never forget. Today is not the end, is a beginning. She handed out the certificates one by one. Miguel held his up high, grinning. Aisha clutched hers close to her chest. Ravi accepted his with tears in his eyes. The room glowed with pride. They took turns reading short sentences aloud, the ones they had practiced. Miguel read, I am strong. Aisha read, I can read. Ravi read, I try again. The words filled the room like music, simple yet powerful. Donna clapped softly, her heart overflowing. She had never been prouder in all her years of teaching. Afterward, Ravi approached her with a small box in his hands. His fingers shook as he opened it, revealing a stack of letters. Teacher, he whispered, I think I am ready now. Donna's chest tightened as she placed her hand gently on his. We will read them together, she promised. The box was no longer a prison. It was a future waiting to be claimed. The celebration ended with laughter, photos, and hugs. The students left one by one, carrying their certificates like treasures. Donna lingered, standing in the empty classroom, her heart full. She realized she had found more than a job, more than a pastime. She had found her purpose again. This was not retirement, it was rebirth. On her way home, Donna rolled down the window, letting the wind rush in. The sky was golden, the horizon stretching wide. She whispered the words she had heard from her students. I can read. They echoed in her mind like a song, each repetition stronger than the last. She knew they were not just their words anymore, they were hers too. That night, Donna sat at her desk, her notebook open. She wrote, teaching is not about letters or books, it is about giving back voices, and in doing so, I found mine. She closed the notebook with a smile, her heart steady. Tomorrow was unknown, but she was no longer afraid. She had a purpose, and it was enough.